Welcome to Bloody Besties, your true crime podcast with best friends who have known each other since elementary school. We are your hosts, forensic scientist Ruby Wild, presenting little known cases to
me, Melissa May, the daughter of police officers and true crime addict, who will be the one to bring you fun facts about our episode. So sit back, relax. Just kidding. Stay sharp, buckle up. We hope you enjoy the ride.
Welcome back. This week was a special request by Mel to me. Be prepared. This is going to be a long episode. What was the topic I gave you?
Today's topic is poltergeist.
Okay.
Do you know what the word poltergeist means?
I know that it refers to some sort of entity that moves things around.
Very close, yes. It's a German word. The word poltern means to knock or a noise or a racket.
Okay.
And then the word geist means spirit. A poltergeist is a noisy, usually mischievous ghost responsible for unexplained noises.
Okay.
But I know they've been known to move picture frames, kind of make them crooked.
Yeah. And I kind of, I always think about Paranormal Activity, even though I know that winds up being a demon. Again, the movie has been out forever. I am not spoiling anything, but I always picture that when people say poltergeist. What we're actually talking about is the poltergeist curse off of the movie. We should start by dipping our toes into what actually qualifies something as a curse. So technically, it's something that is an expressed wish that some form of misfortune takes place on a person, place, or object using a supernatural power. It has to be something that someone has said, I want this bad thing to befall this thing, technically, based on the definition. There are various curses throughout the world. Germans call it hexing, Middle East, Africa, and the Caribbean, amongst others, have the evil eye. The Egyptians would place them on inscriptions to protect their tombs, and it's even in the Bible. There's voodoo, and again, this is all just touching the surface. They're in the fairy tales. Picture Beauty and the Beast, where they curse the beast, who is technically a prince. You've got Sleeping Beauty with the prick of her finger, causing her to stay asleep, and Shrek, the curse of an ogre. Now, there's also cursed objects. A lot of you have heard of Annabelle and the Robert dolls. Maybe you've heard of Letta. And there's also James Dean's car and the Hope Diamond. And they're all supposedly bringing misfortunes to the owners. For example, a very truncated version of the Hope Diamond's curse. It's a blue diamond that weighs 45.52 carats. To put that in perspective, a lot of like engagement rings out there are what, 1 to 2 carats?
I am not a diamond girl, so I have no idea what we're talking about.
Mine is manufactured in a smattering of small ones. I don't know what they are, but I'm assuming they're mostly like 1 to 2 carats if you're not super rich. So 45 carats is quite big. Now the curse is said to have started with the Tavernier Blue, and that was supposedly a precursor to the Hope Diamond, and that one started at 115.16 carats. And that was allegedly stolen from a Hindu statue in the 17th century. And it was the priests who put a curse on whoever was in possession of that diamond. Now, the person who stole that diamond, allegedly, was Jean Baptiste Tavernier. And after he stole it, he came down with a raging fever that caused his death. But take this with a grain of salt because someone with the same name is recorded as dying of the age of 84. Historical records, we all know how that goes. Now we've got King Louis XIV. He bought the diamond, named it the Blue Diamond of the Crown and the French Blue before he died from gangrene. The diamond was then inherited by King Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette, who 9 months later were beheaded. 1791, Wilhelm Fals stole the diamond during the French Revolution, cut it down to the current size, and that was before his son stole the diamond from him, killed him, and then killed himself.
This has Peaky Blinder vibes all over it. Remember when Tommy gave his new wife that ruby?
Yes.
And then she got shot?
Yes. And
This is what
they talked about how that was like cursed. It was the cursed jewel.
Yes.
Good throwback.
I'm all about Pinky.
I mean, duh. I've seen it twice. I know you've seen it twice at least. And it's delightful. And we're not done yet with the Hope Diamond, by the way, because we are now at Simon. Why do I do this to myself and put these names in here? Simon Mauchus. Charisse. We're going with it. And he sold it to Pierre Cartier. And after he sold it, he drove his car off a cliff. Then we have Evelyn Walsh McLean, and she had purchased it from Pierre Cartier. She had her mother in law die, her 9-year-old son die, and that was after she purchased it in 1912. This was followed by her husband leaving her for another woman before he was committed to a mental institution. Her daughter then died of a drug overdose before she fell into debt herself, which caused her to sell the diamond in 1949, where no more misfortune behold her. She donated it to the Smithsonian, and that was before it found its current residence at the National Gem and Mineral Collection in the National Museum of Natural History in Washington, D.C. And since then, obviously, the curse has stopped because nobody's actually in physical possession of it. So that's just one example of what a cursed object would be. We're not talking about a cursed object, we're talking about a cursed movie. Is it similar?
Yeah, because it sounds like it's traveling with the items. If you go to a yard sale and you buy a vase and all of a sudden you take it home and now you're having ghosts in your house.
Right. And I could see that. And then this is like anybody who takes part in this movie franchise, evil will befall you, something like that. Tragedy will befall you. I don't know who cursed this movie, if it is cursed. Again, not going on record that it is or isn't. In fact, oh goodness, I don't even know why I don't remember her name, but the woman who winds up cleansing the house,
Uh, Robbie, Zelda.
Zelda, yeah, yeah. And she went on record, like somebody asked her about the curse, and she was basically like, stop belittling people's tragedies into thinking that it's something like that. It's just,
She was a real life medium.
yeah. And so she was just like, it's not cursed. And I'm like, are you just saying that? I don't, I don't know. I don't know. But we're going to go ahead and get into it. So we're back to the topic at hand and wondering if a movie itself can be cursed or all these incidents just sheer coincidence. So this movie, again, I'm not giving any spoilers. The movie came out 40 plus years ago, okay? It was
1982.
yes, and it was directed by the same man who did the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Toby Hooper, and it was written and produced by Steven Spielberg. It had all the makings of a hit, and it was. For those who haven't seen it, it's about a family called the Freelings, and their lives are disrupted after the paranormal abduction of their daughter Carol Ann, who was played by Heather O'Rourke. It's not the first death of the movie, but it seems like a good place to start is with Heather O'Rourke. And it's a very unfortunate event. Heather was a child actress who became a household name when she starred as Carol Ann in the first movie. She was born in San Diego and she was discovered by Spielberg himself while she was out eating lunch with her mom at the MGM commissary. And thus, the birth of the famous line, "They're here." I say that a lot.
Did you know that she failed her first, what's it called when
Audition?
she failed her first audition there?
I did not.
Because she was laughing during the parts where she was supposed to be scared.
Because I heard that she had like a scream test and then she had like a lines test, but she was only 5.
Yeah.
Okay.
So she failed and then they were in the commissary. And I believe that's when he came.
Gotcha. And if you hear little tippy tappies, we now have Mel's dogs here. We've got Jaeger and Necky, and they're exploring our house. And so you hear little tippy tappies on the tile if you do.
70-pound dog.
I know they're little babies, but that's just because they're our babies. But so back to the topic at hand. And she went on to star after the first Poltergeist in Fantasy Island, Chips, Happy Days, the new Leave It to Beaver. And then she went back to the franchise to star in the second movie. And she was a straight A student, had no problem memorizing her lines, which is so shocking for a little girl of that age. Everybody thought that she'd have a problem. None at all. She was brilliant. She said that the proudest moment of her life was when she was elected the student body president of her 5th grade class in 1985. But I wouldn't be talking about her if tragedy was not about to happen. Heather was diagnosed with Crohn's disease in 1987, and this was after she started to feel ill with nausea. So her mom took her to a doctor to have her checked out. And after 3 times in 1 month, They just kept sending her home saying that Heather had just the flu. Then her feet started to swell, which the doctors diagnosed was because she had Giardias parasitic. So Giardia, right? It's that parasite that is in stagnant water, like your dogs normally get it.
Oh,
So they diagnosed her as having that, and they sent her home with Flagyl, which is like a parasitic or an anti-parasitic, I should say. And it temporarily worked. And so at the following checkup, she was given the all clear from the parasite, but they found that she had an inflammation in her bowels, and that's what gave her the diagnosis of Crohn's. And she was prescribed cortisone and sulfa and sent on her way so that way she could begin filming Poltergeist 3. If anybody has ever been on steroids, such as cortisone, we all know it causes you to get puffy. Like it's happened to me. You get very bloated, puffy. It makes you gain weight. It's very irritating. And she didn't like it because it was giving her these little chipmunk cheeks. And she, was a young girl and she didn't want to look like that. And so they tapered her off a little. When they tapered her off, she became sick again in 1988. She started puking. She was in pain. Her appendages started turning blue. Her stomach became distended. And on February 1st, she fell ill, like she fell. She was rushed to the hospital, but during the transportation, she went into cardiac arrest. They revived her, but she went into surgery where they found an obstructed bowel. She died on the table from septic shock when the obstruction had ruptured. The tragedy here is she never actually had Crohn's. It was discovered instead that she had congenital stenosis, which is an acute bowel obstruction that, when properly diagnosed, could be surgically corrected. She died before the third movie was released. Her parents did file a wrongful death lawsuit against the hospital because they misdiagnosed her so much, first with the flu, then the parasite, then Crohn's, and they wound up settling for an undisclosed amount outside of court. Now, if you're not curled up into a ball from that depressing story, there are a couple more I want to touch on before we hit the one that most of you have already heard of. We've got Will Sampson, who played Taylor, the Native American shaman, who was said to be a real life shaman who performed an exorcism after shooting one night while on set. He died after a heart and lung transplant from kidney failure. He knew that he had this medical condition before he filmed his role. He suffered from scleroderma, which caused severe malnourishment, and complications, which caused organ failure. Then we have Julian Beck, who played that evil preacher, Reverend Henry Kane, in the second movie. Do you remember him? He was like the skeletal, pasty white dude with the weird hat. Like he almost looked like he belonged in Children of the Corn.
oh God.
Yeah. Like he played that role. He was so creepy in it. Nailed it because he
Yeah.
was supposed to
Sounds like
be. And like I said, that was in Poltergeist 2. And he wound up dying from stomach cancer shortly after his role in the movie. But that's not strange, as he too knew that he was ill before accepting the role to film the movie. Then we have Lou Perryman. He played Pugsley, who was a construction worker in the first movie. He was born Louis Byron Perryman in 1941 in Cook County, Texas. He worked behind the scenes, even as an assistant camera operator for the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, or stepping in front of the lens. In addition to Poltergeist, he also had roles in Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, where he was the radio operator, L.G. McPeters. He was killed by Leatherface. He was a sheriff in the 1999 movie Boys Don't Cry with Hilary Swank, and quite a few more titles. But the one that he was most proud of was his lead role in the 1978 indie film The Whole Shootin' Match. He had a daughter, Jennifer, and was at one point married to a woman named Vera. I couldn't get any more details about any of that. On April 1st, 2009, however, 17 years following Poltergeist, that all stopped. Now, a man named Seth Christopher Tatum, whose published age is literally everything from 21 to 36 and every age in between, walked into the police station to confess that he attacked and was, quote unquote, pretty sure he killed a man and then stole his car. Police found the address of the car's owner, and that brought them to Lou's doorstep. All was not well. Lou was dead at the age of 68. Now, who was this killer? Seth was an ex con who had previously served time for burglary of a habitation and robbery in Travis County. In 2006, he had a competency hearing where he was diagnosed bipolar and with polysubstance dependency. That's defined as the abuse of three or more psychoactive substances. He served 3 years, approximately 3 years, returned to Austin in 2009. He stopped taking his meds that March because he didn't think that they were helping. That happens so much with people that need medication for mental health. I'm feeling fine now. I don't need the meds anymore. You're feeling fine because you're taking the meds. Stay on the meds.
I am noticing that's happening a lot in these stories.
Like, just stay on the meds. Like they're they're doing what they're supposed to do and they're making you feel normal. That's the point. Ew. That's like saying a diabetic, "Oh, I'm feeling great on insulin, so I'm just going to stop taking it." The fuck? Anyway. So Seth asked his mother one day before the murders to take him, or before Lou's murder, to take him to Seton Shoal Creek Hospital and have him committed. But she said they couldn't afford it because he didn't have medical insurance. This brings us to April 1st, when he attacked his mother's ex boyfriend, Carl Drake, with gardening shears and an iron fireplace poker. Carl suffered a fractured skull and defensive wounds to his hands, while Seth fled the house to find a car to steal. That's how he wound his way over to Lou's house. And while Lou was sat in front of his computer, Seth let himself in and struck Lou 10 times with an axe. It was mostly in the head, and that was before stealing his 1994 Geo, driving it to a local park where he stayed overnight. It was the next day when he walked into the police station, Blackwell Thurman Criminal Justice Center, and he confessed to what he did. After his arrest, he pled guilty to aggravated assault for the beating and was sentenced to 20 years. He was sentenced to another 20 years to be served consecutively for the murder of Lou. Finally, another daughter from the film, Dana, Carol Ann's older sister, who was played by Dominique Dunn. The same year the movie was released, she met a tragic end as well. She was born in 1959 in Santa Monica, California, to her mother, Ellen, who went by Lenny. She was a ranching heiress, and her father, Dominic, who was a writer, actor, and producer. She had two brothers, Alex and Griffin. Alex was born Alexander, but he went by Alex. They also had two other sisters, but they died in infancy. Her parents divorced when she was 11, but it was a very amicable split. Like everybody admits, Dominic called Lenny his wife, even though they were divorced and living on opposite coasts from each other. So when I say amicable, it was just, they just weren't married anymore. That was the only change. And her mother, unfortunately, was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis in 1975. By the time Poltergeist was being filmed, she was already wheelchair bound. Dominique traveled after high school and she learned Italian while being in Italy. So when she returned to the United States, she was a translator at the Italian Trade Commission. And that was until she caught the acting bug. She followed her dream all the way to Los Angeles, where she got her first role as a teenage mother in Diary of a Hitchhiker, which was released in 1979. She then went on to star in TV shows like Fame, which I loved watching growing up, and Heart to Heart. Do you even remember those movies?
I remember Fame.
I mean, sorry, TV shows.
No. Yeah, I remember that, but I don't remember the heart to heart.
Yeah, you're killing me. So,
That's something.
oh, that's a nerd. So after that, that got her massive break, which was Poltergeist. And it was around this time in 1981 that she also met John Thomas Sweeney. He was a 25-year-old chef at Ma Maison. I'm sure I'm mispronouncing that French name, whatever. And that was a very high-end restaurant. And they met while they were both attending a party. And within weeks, they were living together in a rented house. And that was in West Hollywood. Weeks. I can't say much. I know somebody that moved in with somebody within a month because both their leases were expiring.
Yeah, sometimes you need to help with the rent.
I mean, it is what it is. And some of you may know what a whirlwind romance is, and sometimes it's a good thing and sometimes it's not. And in this case, it wasn't. Dominique started to see the other side of him. He was jealous and controlling. He followed her everywhere, movie sets, acting classes. He started asking her every single day, who were you talking to? What were you saying? He would listen in on phone calls. He was jealous of her money and her fame. She brought him to New York to meet her father and brothers. Like, this is my man. I'm living with him. I love him. Meet my family. And according to an article that her father wrote for Vanity Fair in 1984, The meeting did not go great. John didn't seem to care that he was meeting her family for the first time and did not behave himself. First day that they met John, a male fan had essentially repeated a line from Poltergeist to her that she had said. John saw this, thought he was flirting with his woman, grabbed the man in a rage, shook him, yelled at him. And Alex, her brother, was of the belief he definitely overreacted to the entire situation. The very next day, Dominic admits that there was just a lunch between him, his daughter, and John, and things were awkward. She showed up late, red eyes, extremely distraught, and the conversation between the three was stilted at best. This was supposed to be when you're meeting your girl's family, when you're supposed to be behaving yourself.
Your best behavior.
Apparently not. Now, it's even worse because behind closed doors, he was not just emotionally abusive to her and controlling, but he was physically abusive as well. One notable account happened August 27th, 1982, and that was cause enough for Dominique to run to her mother's house for protection when John grabbed a fistful of her hair so tightly, handfuls of it were ripped out by the roots. While she was at her mother's house, he showed up and started banging on the windows and doors and screaming, "Let me in or you come out. We need to talk." Lenny finally shouted out, threatening to call the cops, and that finally scared him off. But as is unfortunately so often the case, Dominic went back to the house that they shared just a few days later. This was not the end of things because there was another assault in that September, so a month later, where he strangled her. And had a friend not heard the attack and stopped it, she probably would have died that day. That was it. It was the final straw. They broke up and John moved out, allowing Dominique to move on. She landed a role in the upcoming miniseries V. And the funny thing is there's actually a TV show called V that was released probably within the last 10 years. And I'm wondering if it's like a reboot of this. I have no idea. It's about aliens and pretty awesome, not going to lie. So she was running lines with fellow actor David Packer on October 30th. Oh, that's my birthday, 1982. That was when John showed up at her door. She refused to let him inside and chose instead to go out on the porch to talk to him. He was begging for her to take him back, and she said no. He didn't accept no for an answer, and he put his hands on her yet again. David heard some sort of trouble happening outside as he was inside waiting for her. He called a friend and left a message on the machine. If I die tonight, it was by John Sweeney. He then went to the door to find out what was happening. What he saw was a distraught John standing over Dominique. She was lying unconscious in the bushes, having been strangled yet again. But all was not okay. The police and an ambulance were called, and when they arrived, John said, quote, "I've killed my girlfriend and I have tried to kill myself." That second statement was never substantiated, but he was arrested while Dominique was rushed to the hospital. Her heart stopped beating, but she was able to be revived. But alas, she was brain dead and was only alive, sustaining on life support. After 5 days on November 4th, her family finally pulled the plug and allowed two of her kidneys and her heart to be harvested for transplant. Her heart made its way to San Diego or San Francisco, and her kidneys went to the same hospital that she had been in. At the time of the murder, Dominic was in New York and received a phone call from Detective Harold Johnston of the LA Homicide Bureau, who had to tell him about his daughter's attack. This was to let him know where she was. At the time, Griffin, the son, was 27 and minutes away from his father. His father called the news and he was on his father's doorstep within minutes. While Dominic packed, Griffin went to tell Alex what happened, knowing that Alex had already explained how much he disliked John from minute one. So they all had to gather. They all made the family decision. They all made it there before she passed. Now, fast forward to 1983 when the farce of a trial began. And I do mean farce of a trial. The judge appeared to be heavily biased for the defense. He did not allow a testimony from Lenny saying about the incident where Dominique was at her home and he was banging on the doors and windows, and about how Dominique was complaining to her and discussing with her about how scared she was of John, because the judge said it was all hearsay. In addition, John had an ex girlfriend, Lillian Pierce, who actually had to be compelled to testify. She did not want to testify because she did not want to face him again because of the abuse that she suffered by his hand during their 2-year relationship, which included trips to the hospital. Her testimony wasn't allowed in the trial. Jury didn't get to hear it. She was brought up initially for first-degree murder, as the coroner did state that because she was strangled for anywhere from 4 to 6 minutes, and during the opening arguments, the prosecutor even had everyone sit in silence for 4 minutes to drive home the point of how long he had to change his mind. I wanna drive home how long this is. I'm gonna be silent for 5 seconds, okay? 5 seconds. Okay, that's awkward just to sit here and stare at somebody. That was 5 seconds.
Yeah.
4 minutes and you can't change your mind about the actions that you are doing? Are you kidding me? That's why they went for first-degree murder. He had so many options to change his mind. But the very long and irritating story, after some sort of wrangling, it was really convoluted, and I figured this episode was going to be long enough. So rather than going into all of the minutia details about how this trial was a shit show and should not have gone down how it was, the jury came back with voluntary manslaughter, acquitted of first and second degree murder, meaning he could never be tried for that again. And he also was found guilty of misdemeanor assault for the manslaughter, or I'm sorry, for the strangulation incident that happened the month previous.
That is so maddening.
Yep. Voluntary manslaughter and misdemeanor assault. He was sentenced to 6.5 years, ordered to serve 2.5, granted time served. Uh-huh. So he only actually had to serve like basically half the sentence. He was released on parole without even needing a parole hearing. That's what they granted him. 2.5 years, as long as you behave yourself, no parole hearing, peace out for killing his girlfriend.
Why did the judge favor him so much? Like, what's his back?
I oh I do know this. The owner of Mason. Oh gosh, I can't remember his name, but I read this in like some of the documents. Basically, he was backing him, like even fronting some of the money and everything. He was like some rich dude. I can't.
So his family was backing the judge?
No, no, no. The owner of the restaurant was backing John,
Oh,
like basically saying, John's a pillar of the community. We love him. We back him. It was an accident. And it worked. God, why can't I remember his name? It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. It was just a shit show and he got off with nothing. And it irritated me. He was actually released June 21st, 1986. And he was hired as the head chef of the Chronicle, a restaurant in Santa Monica. When the Duns heard about this, all was okay. They stood outside the restaurant to protest, handing out flyers that read, quote, "The food you are eating tonight was cooked by the hands that killed Dominique Dunn."
good for them.
It worked. It worked because John wound up quitting, left Los Angeles, and all was quiet until Dominique's father, Dominic, received a call from Florida. Someone read that Vanity Fair article that I quoted that I got a lot of this information out of. They said, uh, we have a future son in law who's a chef and his name is John Sweeney. Is it the same man? Dominic said, yeah, that's the same man. Don't let your daughter marry him. Going
Run.
by, yeah, going by that account, the wedding was called off. The article did something. And Dominic then used a PI to track John to the Pacific Northwest. He was using now the name John Maura, Maura. He was still working as a chef, but after that, he decided for his own mental health to just let it go in 2009. So after that, I couldn't find any record of John Sweeney, John Mara, chef. I don't know what happened. Dominic became a crime writer after her murder, which started with that Vanity Fair article I referenced. And he wound up covering the O.J. Simpson case, the Phil Spector trial, and the Menendez brothers trial, which is covered in Monster, the TV show, which is where Mel got the wild hair to have me research all of this.
Correct.
She was like, screenshot, we need to cover this. I was like, on it. And then little did she know, I went down so many rabbit holes. I told her I wound up in Wonderland.
Which put me to work for my fun facts.
Heck yeah. Now, Dominic wound up passing in 2009 at the age of 83. Her older brother, Griffin, he works in Hollywood, has a book called The Friday Afternoon Club, a family memoir. He also had roles in in American Werewolf in London, After Hours, and he directed Practical Magic. Halloween little tie in there, right? You're giving me the biggest blank look. Do not tell me you have not watched Practical Magic.
Talking about, I know about the werewolf in London. She's so disappointed right now.
The midnight margarita scene is what we all strive to have. It's got Sandra Bullock, Nicole Kidman, a girl who played Rizzo. I can't think her name off the top of my head because I'm flustered. You're killing me, Smalls. You need to see that movie. It's adorable and lovely.
You'll have
So
to
much fun.
text me again so I know what to look up.
Whatever. Everybody scream with me at her, okay? Practical Magic is delightful. He also recently played the role of Nikki in This Is Us, that TV show that I have never seen.
That's the show everybody cries over.
Yes, it's got like Mandy Moore and Milo. No, Milo. I'm like,
I notice.
I don't know. I don't know. Anywho, he was in This Is Us. He also appeared in Succession and Billions, in addition to numerous other projects. Alex, for his part, became a school teacher in San Francisco. And then, like, he stayed so far under the radar until this crazy incident happened in 1995. He went missing at the age of 38. Like, he went on backpacking, like to go find himself or whatever. His family reported him missing, and he was found 5 days later, stumbling out of the desert in Arizona. And I'm telling you, this made national news that he went missing. Stumbling out of the desert in Arizona. He had gone on a backpacking trip. He fell twice, was so like broken and battered. Like, I think the first one he sprained his ankle, and then because he sprained his ankle, he fell again and hurt his back. He wound up literally having to roll down a mountain, roll because he couldn't walk. And it took him 5 days to make a 5 mile journey back to his car. He said that he saw the helicopter and the search party, but he was so broken, battered. He barely had any food or water because he wasn't expecting to be out there for that long. He couldn't shout for anybody.
We've both been in the Arizona desert before, so I'm picturing exactly where this poor guy was.
Yeah. And it sounds horrendous.
Yeah.
Like, I could picture everything about this. I went hiking. Did I tell you about my accidental 11-mile hike?
Yes. You got lost. Something about your phone dying.
Yes.
Mhm.
Like, I wound up on some like drop trails. I don't know what you would call them, but like that silty sand. My phone was on 5%. I ran out of water. I had brought 2 liters with me, but I was planning on a 7 mile hike, not an 11-mile hike. And then I found a strange man standing in front of me on the trail. And I literally just sat down because I was like, I'm getting murdered. I just sat down and waited. And then he wound up turning around and going the same exact path that I had to go to get to my car. And I'm on the phone with my husband. And I'm like, I don't know how to tell you where I am because I don't know where I am. My phone's about to die. There's a strange man on the trail. I have no more water. It's 100 degrees outside. If I die, I die. I wound up making it, obviously. But let me tell you, not a good idea to hike alone in those kind of situations. So, same thing with this guy. Not a good idea to hike alone in these kind of situations. But he must have learned his lesson because he didn't surface again about his dad after his dad passed and talked about the fond memories that he had of him. Now, other than that, I have no clue what happened to Alex. Moving on to her mother, Lenny, who, along with Marcella Leach or Marcella Leach, I don't know which one it is, don't hate me. Her daughter, Marcella, was murdered in 1983. And together they started the Justice for Homicide Victims Foundation. And that was before Lenny passed in 1997 at the age of 64. You may be asking, how did Marcella Leach's daughter die, right? If you're not, I'm telling you anyway. This is what I mean by so many rabbit holes.
I'm like, where are we going?
Oh, we're going. We're still going. I've got like another 3 pages. We're
On
going.
the same family?
I don't know. You'll see. Stay tuned. So, short segue into Marcella's daughter's story. She was born Marcelie, went by Marcy, and she was a beautiful soul. She loved animals, worked with blind students in high school. She intended to become a special education teacher while attending UC Santa Barbara. So she was definitely one of those girls who was described as lights up a room.
Ah.
And it sounds like she earned it, like me. She worked sometimes as a fashion model. So she was beautiful on top of everything. So a great soul and beautiful. That's unfair.
I hate her.
I mean, but I don't.
Right.
I love her, but like only because I just, it's not fair. Okay. So all was going great and in an upward direction in her life until she turned 21. That's when her ex boyfriend, Kerry Conley, another man who refused to take no for an answer. They dated for 5 years before they broke up. And 5 days later, he convinced her to come to his place, which was literally a makeshift living quarters. Like, picture, what am I thinking of? Like a shack almost on his parents' property. What's the word? A shed. Like he's living in like a shed on his parents' property.
Or like a pool house.
Yeah. And so he convinces her to go there to talk to him. Like, we broke up. I want you to talk to me. And she agrees because she's so kind. And this was in Malibu. For her troubles of going there, she was shot in the face with a shotgun and she died. It was a 410 shotgun, if anybody cares. Harry, after his arrest, he said two different things, like of how this happened. The first, he said that his 410 shotgun fell off a shelf, and when it fell, it struck Marcy. The other said he was wasted drunk, did not expect to shoot her, and tried to say it was an accidental discharge when he attempted to grab the shotgun with one hand off the shelf. And then he like somehow fired it
Mhm.
in her direction to hit her square in the head.
Right.
I'm not saying one way or the other is right. Just saying there was a trial. He was to be tried for her murder, but the whole family was shocked to find him walking around their local grocery store 1 week later. So he's arrested. He's charged with murder. He makes bail because the bail was only $100,000. Nobody told them that he was out on bail. And he was walking around as a free man for 2 years while he waited for his trial to happen. And the family had to continue to see him because they all lived in the same area.
What area is this?
Malibu, I want to
Oh.
say. Yeah. So when the trial finally happened in 1985, he was found guilty of second-degree murder, sentenced to life, and died while in prison. But because of this, it leads us into talking about her family and her mother, who was mentioned as being a part of the other foundation, and her brother, who's Henry T. Nichols III. He went on to become a billionaire because he was a co-founder of Broadcom Corp. And I'm sure that you've heard of them.
No, but like billionaires, like I'm the third person.
I know. I
Your name
know.
comes with it.
It does, but he actually, like, he was a self-starter. And Broadcom, like, they make the Bluetooth headsets, computer chips and iPhones, things like that. So that's probably why you've heard about it. But he used his money to bankroll campaigns nationwide to have Marcy's Law put into effect. And I don't know if you're familiar with what Marcy's Law is. So Marcy's Law in the United States, it's an amendment added to the legislation, and it's like each state has to allow it. It's not a federal amendment. And it's basically it's the law that ensures that victims and their families are notified of any ongoing hearings, or like bail releases or anything like that, and allows them to voice their concerns in the proceedings. So, like, say somebody has a bail hearing, it allows the victims to go there and speak why they think that this person should or shouldn't be allowed released on bail or parole or anything along those lines. So it notifies the victims when these things are coming up. So it's a beautiful law. You're going to love this one. You're going to love this part. And by love it, I mean you're going to rage. Okay. All is not sunshine and rainbows because the Los Angeles District Attorney George Gaskin
Hmm.
in California, Los Angeles, California, he decided to write a memorandum stating that his office would no longer notify crime victims of upcoming parole hearings. That was in 2022. And in addition, it also states essentially that even if the prosecution is entirely against somebody getting released, they are to remain neutral regardless. if they're the ones who prosecuted them to put them in jail. They are to remain neutral. They are not to show up at hearings to express why they do not believe a parolee should or should not be paroled at all.
I'm not.
And after making this decision, that same month, 14% or 102 inmates were granted parole. Some of these people had committed murder. Of note, Los Angeles alone comprises 45% of paroled inmates in all of the state of California. I told you were going to rage. I made Mel speechless. Yeah. So do with that what you will. That might be part of the reason that people keep trying to recall the man, but hasn't happened yet. And thank gosh, I don't live there anymore. It's
Right.
somebody else's problem now. Sorry about that. So back to the topic of the day. Don't forget, we were talking about Poltergeist, the movie, The Curse. Now, what could have led to the curse? There's always been the talk that there were human remains, the human skeletons in the pool during that one scene. I always thought that this was an urban legend. It was neither confirmed nor denied, but there was a special effects or special makeup effects artist named Craig Reardon. He worked on the film. He gave an interview in a docuseries called Cursed Films. And in that interview, he said it was not uncommon for movies back in the day with low budgets to go to the biological supply warehouse to obtain real skeletons for their films because it was cheaper than making them. He said this was definitely done on the original House of Haunted Hill movie and the 1931 Frankenstein movie. So do with that information what you will as to whether or not these were real skeletons. I am of the belief that they were.
I agree.
Especially considering the actress, I can't remember her name.
JoBeth.
Okay, so JoBeth did say that she was told this after she filmed the scene where she's swimming around with a bunch of actual human skeletons.
Yep.
So that's the only information that I found about why this movie was cursed. Did you find out more?
I did not, but I have an addition to the pool scene. So she hated that scene because it was muddy, it was wet conditions, and all the electrical equipment, lighting
Mhm.
was surrounding the pool, and it was just making her feel unsafe. So Spielberg, to help relax her, he got in the pool with her
Oh,
and he said, "Now, if the light falls, we'll both cry."
I mean,
Sweet.
it is, but I don't know if that would make me feel. I don't know why I got so squeaky on that one, but
That's what he did.
well, remember how I told you I have multiple pages left, and that is the end of the Poltergeist. But there's more because there's more cursed movies. So we have The Exorcist, the deaths of Jack McGowran, and in the film he was killed by Pazuzu. He died of the flu before the film was released. Vasiliki Maliaros. I don't know why. Okay, I'm sorry. I can't memorize all these names beforehand, and I did look it up, and I don't know why I'm having such a hard time with it. Vasiliki Maliaros, who was the mother of Father Damien Cross, um, who died the same year from natural causes. Linda Blair and Max von Sydow. They both lost family members while film was in production. There was a fire on the set that was caused by a bird flying into the circuit box, and it delayed filming for 6 weeks while they rebuilt the set.
That's a long time.
And after which, they actually had a priest come in to bless the set. So,
Let's do sage.
I mean, at some point, you got to be like, okay, Father, Son, Holy Ghost, come here and help me. That's not the only one. 1976, The Omen. Two people involved had their planes struck by lightning on their way to film the movie in England. Special effects artist that created a decapitation scene was in a head-on collision that wound up decapitating his girlfriend. Yeah. We've got Twilight Zone, the movie that premiered in 1983. There was a tragedy on set when Vic Morrow and two children, Micah Din Lee and Renee Shin Yi Chen, 7 and 6 respectively, were struck when helicopter blades. There was an explosion on the set and it caused the helicopter to canter. So that way it went nose down and it continued to go forward and the helicopter blades struck all three of them, killing them. You already heard my thoughts on Superman and how I haven't seen the movies because I'm just not that into Superman, but we can't ignore the curse of the Superman movies, which a lot of us have heard of. Have you even heard? Oh my goodness.
Oh, but I heard all the other ones.
Okay. Well, the original movie had George Reeves. He died from a gunshot wound. It was declared suicide, but it was only days before he was to get married, and his fingerprints were never found on the gun. So there's that. Then we've got Christopher Reeve, who during our lifetime was paralyzed from falling off a horse.
He was jumping.
How do you not know about the curse of Superman when you know about all of his stuff? I know you know about it.
Christopher.
He's part of the curse of Superman. And then Marlon Brando, who was a co star of the movie, actually died within 3 months of Christopher Reeve, who he died in 2004. And then his wife died 2 years later from him of lung cancer. So maybe, I don't know. But none of the other Supermans, knock on wood, because Henry
Yeah.
Cavill, Cavill,
The Witcher.
yes, um, we like him. So hopefully the movie's no longer cursed. And finally, again, I know that this is a long episode, but deal with me because it's all interesting. We're going to talk about Rebel Without a Cause movie. And like I said, the James Dean car, I'm not going into how the car is cursed. Okay. That's like a whole nother thing as well. But the main actors of the movie all died in their prime. We're going to start with James Dean. Got into a car accident in his Porsche on a California highway at the age of 24. Nick Adams died of an accidental suicide in his home. Natalie Wood, we've all heard about her. She was found in the ocean off the California coast while still dressed in her nightgown. There's like the whole story about her, numerous documentaries, podcasts, everything Natalie Wood is out there. If you haven't heard about it, you're not a true crime addict. Just simple as that. Finally, we have Sal Mineo. He received an Academy Award nomination in 1955 for playing Plato Crawford in this movie, Rebel Without a Cause. He went on to have roles in Giant, The Longest Day, and Escape from the Planet of the Apes. He won a Golden Globe and another Academy Award nomination for his role in the movie Exodus. He was very open about his bisexuality, which in the era, not exactly a great move for his career, but a boon for the movement as a whole, I should say. He was bisexual, so men, women, he loved love. Simple as that. Now, Sal was parking his car February 12th, 1976, around 9:30 p.m. after coming home from a rehearsal from a play he was going to star in. He was behind his apartment when his neighbors heard him cry for help. "Oh God, someone please help me." They went running to see what was wrong, and they found Sal lying in a pool of blood, having been stabbed in the heart. He was pronounced dead at the age of 37. Police thought that the attack was personal at first, or a hate crime because of his bisexuality. Both these thoughts would be proved wrong. May 1977, a woman told police she knew who killed Sal. Her husband was Lionel Ray James, a pizza delivery man with a criminal record. She said that the night Sal was killed, he came home in a bloody shirt and admitted he, quote unquote, killed a dude in Hollywood. Police had been on the wrong track due to witness sightings of a tall, white, light colored, curly haired man running away. Lionel was short and black. It's very wrong. Lionel was serving time for check forgery in 1977 when a deputy overheard him telling his cellmate that he killed an actor named Sal Mineo. He was officially charged with the murder, and at his trial, which happened in 1979, he was found guilty of his second-degree murder. In addition to 10 robberies, he was to serve at least 50 years. But this is California we're talking about, so he was paroled in 1990 after only serving 12. It all comes full circle, doesn't it? Lionel denies the killing and takes part in a documentary that was released in 2024, which was titled Unseen Innocence, in order to plead his case. I did not watch the documentary. It is what it is. Okay. Now that's where I'm going to wrap things up for this episode because I had to pull myself out of all the rabbit holes because I just kept going deeper and deeper. So if you want more on this type of topic, feel free to hit up our social medias. Let us know. Um, Hopefully you enjoyed this little Halloweeny spooky season tale. And thank Mel for the episode request.
Yes, I have a couple more additions.
Let's do it.
So back to Poltergeist. So there is a conspiracy about who actually directed it.
Oh,
They're saying, was it Steven Spielberg or was it Toby Hooper?
see, okay, I did read about that, and they do say the son in that. I can't think of his name, but he did an interview pretty recently, and he said, yes, Steven Spielberg was a major part of it, but Toby was there every step of the way.
Right. Spielberg wrote it
Yes,
and produced it,
yes.
but he was also in contract with Universal to do E.T., which released in 1982.
So I did hear that he did some interview, the son, where he said that, yeah, Steven Spielberg was, there as well, but Toby was absolutely there the entire step of the way.
Yeah, so the cast and crew both believe that Spielberg was the secret director.
Well, you said that he was doing ET. Like,
E.T.
what does that have to do with anything, though, if he's already doing ET?
Because when you're contracted with the movie, you're not supposed to do another movie at the same time.
I didn't know that.
But he remained on set as assistant, quote unquote, and producer. So he still, like, his heart was in Poltergeist as well.
Okay, then.
Yeah. And also, so part of a curse, I guess, would be the clown scene.
Oh, gosh.
I totally thought of you.
Wait, can I just say, okay, I've already said I'm terrified of clowns.
Yes.
The reason is, okay, the reason is I was given a clown as a baby by a guy named Bear, who was part of my dad's trick club. But anyway, that's beside the point. This clown, every time you pushed its belly, it would go, literally, and it looked like a poltergeist clown. So I was afraid of this clown before that movie even came out. It is the same stupid clown, and I still have it to this day because I'm terrified to get rid of it.
Well, the movie came out in 82.
Darling, I was too.
You remember, you would remember it as a 2-year-old because you're you.
Do you know what my first memory is? Like ever? Do you know your first memory?
Yours is coming out of the womb.
It's not. Like,
Could you imagine?
no, I vividly remember being in my crib. My sister, who's only a year older than me, we shared a room during that time. And I vividly remember I'm in my crib and I look from the crib in my little yellow, little girl wallpapered room. And I see my sister in her toddler bed. Vividly remember this.
My first memory was coming back. My mother had a procedure
Mhm.
and I was sitting in her lap in our little pickup truck going up the mountain. We lived in a single wide above the wash in Sunland, Sun Valley area. And we parked. My dad was driving, parked the truck. I looked down and there's a rattlesnake right where my mom would open the door and exit to. That's one of my first memories.
That's pretty crazy. Okay, so back to the stupid, horrific clown that nobody likes.
So back to the clown scene. So Robbie was being strangled by the clown in the scene.
Yeah.
The clown's arms became extremely tight and were actually choking Robbie.
What?
Yeah. So the director, Hooper, instructed Robbie, hey, look at the camera. And so it wasn't until he started turning purple that Spielberg realized it was real
Oh my gosh.
and he released him.
Oh my gosh. Okay, that's pretty crazy. I did not know
Yeah.
that.
Because it was a robot.
Yeah. I could imagine like it's like a synthetic, like
Electronic.
tightening. Oh my gosh.
It's turning blue.
That's pretty crazy. Well, again, hopefully you guys like this episode. We know it's a little bit longer than usual, but it's not always a bad thing.
Right. And we rushed it just so you could get you a Halloween special.
Yes, fastest I've ever written an episode in all of my podcasting career.
Yes.
But, all right. Talk to you guys next time.
Bye, y'all.
The views and thoughts expressed in this podcast are ours alone and do not represent the thoughts or opinions of anyone else. The information presented is for general information purposes only. We are not liable for anything you do with this information.